great empires collapse, people often imagine battlefields first. Fire on the horizon, cavalry in the dust, kings brought down by invading armies. But sometimes decay begins somewhere quieter, in a corridor, in a banquet hall, in a royal bedroom behind guarded doors. That is where this story begins. Not with Persia losing a province, not with rebels storming a city, with desire, humiliation, and the private madness of a king who had already failed in public. After the disasters in Greece, Xerxes returned to Susa, not as the unchallenged master of destiny he once imagined himself to be, but as a ruler wounded in the one place absolute monarchs rarely survive, being wounded pride. His empire still stretched across immense distances. His authority was still law, yet inside something had broken. And when a ruler whose power has no visible limits begins trying to cure humiliation through appetite, the damage rarely remains personal. It spreads outward, through the household, through the line of succession, through the trust that holds the court together. In this case, it spread so far that one act of lust ended in mutilation, dynastic murder, and the destruction of Xerxes' own family from within. The transcript frames the whole sequence around one central truth, and it is the right place to start. This was not a war story in the usual sense. It was a court disaster that became a political catastrophe. Xerxes had returned from Greece after the humiliations of Salamis and Plataea, a king still all-powerful in form, but psychologically diminished. That matters because defeated rulers often become most dangerous, not when their authority is challenged openly, but when their wounded ego seeks smaller, more controllable victories to prove it still rules the world. Xerxes no longer needed military strategy to feel powerful. He needed possession. He needed someone to submit. And according to the transcript, the object of that desire was the wife of his own brother, Amestris. This is essential because it immediately made the affair more than private temptation. A king's infidelity with a nameless concubine was ordinary palace life. Desire aimed at his brother's wife was political poison. She was protected not only by marriage, but by blood, and that meant any attempt to dishonor her could tear the royal family open from the inside. What makes the early phase of the story so revealing is that the woman refused him. That refusal matters more than any later scandal because it set the whole machine in motion. Xerxes was not simply denied physically, he was denied symbolically. A single woman had placed a boundary in front of a man who believed boundaries existed only for other people. The transcript captures his reaction as obsession turning strategic, and that feels exactly right. He could not simply seize her without risk. Amestris was not a disposable court ornament. He was a powerful royal brother, a respected military figure, and a man whose humiliation might trigger consequences even Xerxes did not want to face directly. So the king did what men of absolute power often do when direct appetite becomes inconvenient. He moved sideways. If he could not reach the mother, he would reach through the daughter. That daughter was Artainte. Xerxes arranged for his own son, the crown prince Darius, to marry her. Outwardly, this looked like a dynastic alliance, another wise royal union strengthening family bonds. Inwardly, It was a trap disguised as favor. The transcript's logic here is especially strong. The marriage solved two problems for Xerxes at once. It publicly reassured the mother that danger had passed, and it brought the daughter permanently into the orbit of the palace. Now, as his daughter-in-law, always near, always accessible, always within the architecture of royal power. This is where the story becomes less about spontaneous passion and more about the corruption of the court itself. Xerxes did not merely fall into wrongdoing. He reorganized family structure around it. The mother believed her family had been secured. That was the fatal misunderstanding. Because once Artante entered the palace as the wife of the heir, Xerxes shifted his attention fully onto her. The transcript presents the seduction as gradual gifts, glances, private approaches, pressure mixed with fascination, and that is important because it shows how power works in royal households. He did not need open force when status, fear, and proximity could do the work more quietly. Artayante, unlike her mother, did not resist for long. She was young, flattered, intimidated, and suddenly the focus of the most powerful man in the world. That combination is central to the story. Court corruption often begins where fear and privilege mix. Soon the affair began, and with it the palace crossed a line from moral scandal into dynastic self-destruction. Xerxes was now betraying not only his brother, but his own son. The heir to the throne had become the public husband of a woman privately claimed by the king. At this point, the most dangerous person in the palace was no longer Xerxes. It was Amestris, the queen. That shift matters because the transcript understands something many simpler retellings miss. In royal courts, the king's weakness often creates space for other forms of power to harden. Amestris had tolerated the usual noise of empire: mistresses, concubines, casual betrayals that did not threaten the structure of succession or her own standing. But this was different. Artayante was not a peripheral woman. She was now embedded in the royal family itself. She was the wife of the future king. If she gained too much influence over Xerxes, the queen could no longer treat the affair as a private irritation. It had become a threat to rank legitimacy and inheritance. Then came Xerxes' fatal mistake. In a moment of reckless intimacy, he promised Artayante that whatever she asked would be hers. The request she made is one of the most politically loaded details in the whole transcript. She did not ask for gold, land, or luxury. She asked for a robe woven by Amestris herself for the king. That robe was not just an object. It was a symbol, personal, intimate, and public, all at once. To wear it would be to announce before the court that the mistress had stepped into the space of the wife. Xerxes understood immediately how dangerous that was. He tried to dissuade her, offered other rewards, pleaded for a different request. But because he had already made the oath, and because kings who rule through sacred prestige become prisoners of their own rituals, he gave in. He sent the robe, and Artayante wore it publicly. That decision transformed a secret scandal into a declaration. It is the hinge of the entire palace crisis because it forced Amestris to move. Up to that point, she had suspicions, fragments, impressions. Now she had visible humiliation. Yet instead of lashing out blindly, she did something more dangerous. She interpreted. She searched for the deeper hand behind the insult. And here the tragedy sharpens because she interpreted wrongly. She concluded that the true architect was not the young Artante, but her mother, the same woman Xerxes had wanted before. In the queen's mind, the sequence became clear in a distorted way. The mother had refused the king, then used her daughter to seduce him and undermine the queen from within. This was a catastrophic misreading, but internally it made sense to a woman who thought in power rather than innocence. So Amestris prepared revenge, not against the girl, but against the mother. What followed is the darkest part of the story, and it is worth telling plainly without dwelling on gruesome detail. On the king's birthday, when Persian custom required him to grant a royal request, Amestris asked for Macistes's wife. Xerxes understood instantly what that meant. He tried to redirect her. He begged for another wish. But just as he had trapped himself with Artante, now he was trapped again by royal tradition and public expectation. He yielded. The woman was seized, and under the queen's orders, she was subjected to a brutal punishment meant not simply to kill, but to erase status, beauty, and identity. The transcript presents this as one of the most savage acts in the story, and the historical point to carry forward is not the physical detail itself, but the meaning of it. Amestris wanted her as a living message. The queen was not merely taking revenge. She was asserting that the women of the royal house existed inside a hierarchy enforced by terror. Meanwhile, Xerxes panicked for a more practical reason. He knew exactly what this would mean if Macistes's learned the truth. So he attempted one of the most grotesque political bargains in the narrative. He offered his brother a royal marriage, his own daughter, in exchange for divorcing his wife. The move reveals everything about Xerxes' moral collapse. He thought dynastic reward might compensate for the destruction already underway. He misunderstood his brother completely. Macistes's refused. He loved his wife, loved the family already built with her, and would not discard her for court advancement. In that refusal, the final bridge between the brothers burned. Soon after, Macistes's discovered what had been done to his wife and understood at once that the king had tried to purchase his silence after allowing the crime to happen. Grief turned into revolt. He fled Susa with his sons, aiming for Bactria, where as governor, he hoped to raise loyal forces and turn personal betrayal into civil war. This is one of the most important transitions in the story. A palace scandal becomes a military threat. Xerxes suddenly sees the full cost of what he has unleashed. His brother is not simply wounded emotionally, he is politically dangerous. Bactria was a major eastern province with real military weight. If Macistes's reached it safely, Persia might face a dynastic split at the very moment its king was already morally compromised. So Xerxes sent the immortals after him, not to negotiate, but to end the problem before it could become public war. The pursuit succeeded. Macistes's and his sons were intercepted before they could consolidate power and were killed. That act preserved the throne in the immediate sense, but it also completed Xerxes' self-destruction as a ruler. A king who had allowed his brother's wife to be destroyed, and then had his own brother and nephews executed to bury the scandal, was no longer merely compromised. He was hollowed out, and this is where the deeper political story begins. Because once a ruler proves he can destroy his own blood to cover the consequences of his appetites, the real danger moves to the men closest to him. They begin to ask whether the king himself has become the empire's greatest weakness. The transcript gives that role to Artabanus, captain of the guard. This makes strong narrative sense, and historically the broad outline is familiar. Palace officials and guards saw the decay at the center and began calculating succession. Artabanus recognized what the scandal had revealed. Xerxes was no longer a stable axis of rule. The queen was ruling by fear inside the palace. The heir Darius was tainted by humiliation. The household was poisoned. In a court like that, survival often begins to look like patriotism when ambitious men explain it to themselves. So Artabanus, with the eunuch chamberlain as accomplice, formed a plan that was both simple and diabolical. Kill the king, blame the heir, then eliminate the heir as well, leaving a younger and more manageable prince to rule under their influence. The plan worked almost perfectly at first. Xerxes was murdered in his own bed by the men responsible for his protection. Then the younger prince Artaxerxes was awakened and told that his brother Darius had committed the crime. In shock and fear, he believed it. Darius was rushed and killed before he could understand the accusation, much less answer it. In a single night, king and heir were removed. Artabanus appeared not as murderer, but as savior. This is one of the bleakest ironies in the entire sequence. The disorder unleashed by Xerxes' personal corruption did not remain personal. It destabilized the line of succession and handed the empire over to the logic of palace elimination. But Amestris was still alive, and that is why Artabanus ultimately failed. The queen, for all her cruelty, understood the inner logic of the palace too well to accept the official story at face value. She investigated, servants were questioned, fragments were gathered. Eventually, she uncovered the truth and told the young Artaxerxes what had happened. His father had been murdered by Artabanus, and his brother Darius had been killed under false accusation. The revelation forced Artaxerxes into adulthood violently. He had to understand all at once that he had been manipulated into fratricide. Yet this same revelation gave him the only chance to survive. If Artabanus had killed king and heir already, then the younger son would be next once he ceased to be useful. So Artaxerxes feigned ignorance, drew loyal nobles to his side, and turned the trap back on the kingmaker. Artabanus was summoned, seized, and executed along with his sons and allies. The purge was total. By the end, the Persian Empire had avoided civil war in the formal sense, but only by drowning the royal family and the inner court in blood. Xerxes dead, Darius dead, Masistes dead, Masistes' sons dead, Artabanus dead, the innocent wife destroyed and effectively erased, Artainte reduced to irrelevance, Amestris still standing. That is the final weight of the story. It began with desire and ended with a dynastic bloodbath, because in absolute courts, no private vice stays private for long. Xerxes did not lose Persia to a foreign invasion in this narrative. He helped rot it from the inside. His defeat in Greece wounded his pride. His wounded pride sought domination inside the household. That household violence shattered trust, destabilized succession, provoked revenge, and opened the door to regicide. The Persians still had an empire afterward, but what they no longer had was the illusion that the god king stood above ordinary human corruption. The King of Kings had been revealed as a man enslaved by appetite, trapped by his own promises, manipulated by the women and guards around him, and finally murdered by the very system meant to keep him safe. That is why this story matters. Not because it is sensational, though it is. Not because it is uniquely savage, though it is savage enough. It matters because it shows how empires are often damaged first, at the point where power and intimacy collide. A ruler's private weakness becomes a court faction. A court faction becomes a succession crisis. A succession crisis becomes blood silence and fear. By the time armies march, the collapse has often already begun somewhere much quieter. In this case, it began with one look, one refusal, one misplaced promise, and one robe worn at the wrong banquet. The rest was only the empire following the logic of its own corruption to the end.